Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Oh my gosh, my hat isn't on straight. I am telling you, I am not even messing around today. I'm in a very bad mood. It is the morning you guys requested. You're like, please do it in the morning again because you were such a turbo bitch. I don't know if I can cuss this early in the video. That's why I'm being extra. But here I am. I'm doing it. Like I said, witch hat is just starting on. I'm already a witch. As I said, Saturday was the very good or very bad, no good day. It is now Sunday, and I have to be up a little earlier, and I have to deal with stuff. I have to deal with car-related stuff. So I'm really pissed. So what better way to use that energy, my chapel rage, than in responding to this podcast. So let's go ahead. So like I said, we're just starting out the gate.
Follow us for more behind the scenes chaos. We have bloopers, we have Allie raging, we have, me climbing out windows. I don't know. We just have a bunch of crazy stuff over there. Yeah, so you can find us on Patreon. That's PATREON.
I'm making you guys watch this.
.com
/ the Fab Fatties.
PATE.
No.
PATREON.
That's what I said.
.com / the Fab Fatties.
And we will see you over there.
I think that's really the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's really the thing that makes it so uncomfortable, because now I'm going back to what Alyssa referenced. Alyssa and I were in the emergency room together, and we had there was a great nurse. There was a great was she security? I think she was security.
Yeah.
Right?
1 second. Okay.
She was a hoot.
She was a hoot. Oh my God, she was
Loved
a hoot.
her.
They were so kind. Everybody there was so kind, right? And they both connected to us through our bodies. Mm-hmm. And Alyssa and I were
through their perception of our bodies.
And through their bodies, right? In the way that you're talking about, Rebecca, of they see us, and we are able to talk about things a little bit more freely, a little bit more openly than I think a lot of other fat people, and surely the fat girl that I was 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. But it was being met with oh yeah, it's so great to hear about your podcast, but I had this surgery to get rid of, and I lost this much weight, and I totally get it. And it's yes, and no you don't. Right? It's we're talking about,
but we're special because we didn't lose it. I think it's kind of ridiculous. I was sorry, I don't know what I was looking at. I think it's kind of ridiculous to view yourself as special for losing weight or for not losing weight. It's certainly not losing it. At least when you lose it, there's an accomplishment aspect. But you're not a special snowflake whatsoever with anything related to weight. Again, everybody can gain weight. Everybody can lose weight. It's one of those universal things. So it's always important to keep that in mind. They're really trying hard to claim the fat experience, or to claim it, or, for themselves or whatever. That type of rhetoric. It doesn't work. Everybody can gain weight. Everybody can lose weight. And when you say things like that, it pisses them off because it makes them feel less special. So...
not living our lives that way anymore, right?
Yeah.
Not in a way of oh, we don't want to be this or we don't want to be that, but just in a way that it's we're finally letting ourselves live.
Yeah.
That's how we've always connected.
You'll have a hard time with living with that much excess weight. It still gets in the way. I know that they act like physical boundaries don't exist, or there isn't any kind of barriers to living your life when you are that size, but trust, it gets worse. Trust, You know, as I always say on this channel, I've stared into the eye of Sauron that is the end of the road when it comes to this stuff. It definitely interferes with your ability to live life. Even long before a health crisis, it already is. Even if you only care about emotions, it affects your emotions. There isn't a benefit to it at all. So, you know, I would say the emotional side is probably one of the first things to go when it comes to obesity. And it only goes downhill from there. It's not cool.
That's how I've always been connected to, or how I've attempted to connect to people as well, is just like, you know, and I say this all the time, you know, my first time hanging out in a room full of, I'm going to say, slightly larger people was a Weight Watchers meeting. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it wasn't until my very first Charlotte Plus event that I was like, oh my God, you can get together with other fat people and not talk about salads and steps. Holy shit. This was an entirely new concept to me.
Well, I think that's what makes.
Well, I don't know what she's acting like. Like, fat people have been friends. There's a lot of fat people that are friends together. There's fat people that are in relationships with each other. Oftentimes, fat people are all fat in the family. Like, I don't know why she's acting like a fat person has never been around another fat person. And like, and when we get into the pathological side of things, again, toxic ritualistic reinforcement is something that happens very often, all the time, especially within families, where these disorders do have a genetic basis and they tend to be all in the family. And I think it can be especially difficult if you are losing weight and everybody else in your family is big. Then it can create reinforcement techniques in the family and all this stuff, and people can start fighting about it. That type of thing is really common. So it's like, why is she acting like there's never been fat people that have bonded over eating or dieting or body hatred? That's super common. And it's like, did she never talk to anybody in her life that was fat? Like, I don't understand that personally. Like I said, I mean, for me, it was in my family. So obviously, if anything, I spent the most time around other people who are fat. So I just, and like I said it before, like, there is no correlation between fatness and belief. So you can both be fat and have absolutely nothing in common. Like, they act like there is a universal fat experience. There's a universal fat this, fat that. Like, it just doesn't exist. It depends completely on your time and place. It depends completely on, like, your family life. It depends completely on everything. Even within the United States, you're going to have a different reaction to you based on how big you are. If you're in Alabama versus California, it's going to be different. You're going to have a different circumstance. I think with the internet and TikTok and stuff like that, it has become a little bit more universal in the United States, but prior to that, it could be completely different. And that has only been popular for, like, you know, around since 2017 or even later, really, even 2020. You could still have a vastly different experience up until that time. So, and even now you still could. But it's like, I just do not understand the concept of trying to link up based on weight, but also trying to gatekeep it too. So it's like she's trying to have it both ways, where she's like, we don't do it that way, we're special, but also we can connect on so many different things because we're both fat. It's like, you can't have it both ways, because if that's the case, you have to acknowledge the person who's lost weight. You have to acknowledge their fat experience, and they don't. So I need you guys to understand, who do not have toxic ritualistic mindsets or behaviors, that there's no logic behind this. It's completely shifting, narrative shifts, even within one conversation. Because how does it make any sense that you're going to have everything in common with somebody who's not trying to lose weight and nothing in common with somebody who's lost weight? It doesn't work. It's inconsistent. And there's no logic. It doesn't exist. And I think a lot of times I do see a lot of well-meaning people trying to understand what they're saying or trying to give them credit where none is due, because it's logical gobbledygook. It's illogical. What they say, it doesn't make any sense. There is no basis for it in reality. And from my perspective, as somebody who was deeply in the disorder, it's very easy for me to see it. It's super, super, super easy. And I can call it out. And so I do. That's illogical. You can't gatekeep being fat, but then also act like if you're both fat, you have everything in common. It doesn't work.
Makes me nervous about it. And again, I haven't been there, and I'm sure people who have been can speak from their experience, right? My fear is that there are the people who this is the very first time they've gotten the courage to go be around other fat people, and then they're encouraged to.
So I need you guys to tell me, like, is being fat genetic or not? Because do people just, are they born, do they spawn off of a spore or something? What do you mean never be around a fat person? And if nobody else in your family is fat and you are, shouldn't it be obvious to you that it's not genetic? Shouldn't it be obvious? Like, at least in my case, it was in my family. So I could at least really try to believe that astroturf narrative, that it is genetic. I could try. I could sit there and, like, try to gaslight myself, even though there were other members of my family, like namely my cousins, who never struggled with their weight when I was younger. It's like, it's a loose connection. There was people on the other side of the family that also didn't struggle with weight. You see, it's like you can kind of shoehorn anything in there to make it make sense in your head, but it really doesn't. And in retrospect, it doesn't make any sense because it's not true. But what does she mean the first time you've talked to a fat person? Like, do they actively avoid fat people? Because I feel like you'd kind of have to, especially if it's in your family. It's just bizarre to me. It's very bizarre.
Part of it perform the moving their body part,
Yeah.
right? And I wonder, actually, this is a question for you, Alyssa. For someone who is in the throes of, like, wanting to move, but having a lot of obstacles there, and I realize you almost can't imagine it being your first one, although it would have been your first time in a big plus fat liberation space, and then being kind of like, here, go to this movement class, how would that have felt?
Wow. I think I could have seen it being really positive for one or two classes.
Sure.
I think if it was all movement focused and was really having me put a lot of attention on my body, I think I would have been in a really negative headspace.
Yes, because if you feel too connected to your body, then what ends up happening, you have to stop. You start to realize that it's creating issues. You start to realize that you can't really keep up the behaviors, that there's something wrong with the behaviors that you're doing. And when that comes into your brain, when you have this disorder, you cannot reconcile that. It creates such a huge amount of cognitive dissonance. It creates a distress even. In some cases, a nervous breakdown as you realize that something you're trying to do is completely unsustainable and doesn't make sense. So you have to bury your head back in the sand again, over and over and over again. Because if you're so healthy at every size, what does it matter if you're active all the time? Why would it matter?
Just
Yeah.
because it's a lot. You know, I was about to jump in and pivot our conversation a little bit because we're talking about being a good fatty, which really comes down to the word help.
People used to, and often many people still do, work and toil in fields for like 10 hours a day plus. If you're healthy at any size, you should be able to be just as active. And she would say, well, I have this issue here, there, and the other. Okay, well, maybe you should consider how your weight is affecting those issues, because it likely is. It's likely making them worse. I've always told you guys, being obese, it's like gasoline on a fire. Anything you have going on with your body, it makes it worse. It makes everything worse.
And it is a loaded word that I think we do need to give
But
some
even if
time
she
to.
does have specific issues just for herself, she should realize, well, every fat person beside me is super healthy, so why shouldn't they have all these fitness classes? You know, there isn't any logical basis for it. It doesn't exist. It's an ever shifting, ever nebulous thing in your mind. And when you're talking to other people about it, honestly, you guys have to kind of turn off your brain in order to believe someone like her, because it doesn't make sense. So I'm telling you, don't turn off your brain. Like, if you feel like this doesn't make sense, it probably doesn't. If everybody is so healthy and it's just her that isn't, why wouldn't there be an entire convention about activity? And why would she be so upset about it if she knew, well, I have specific issues? She would know that it's not necessarily going to be catered to her. But see, those are like logical thoughts. That's a logical sequence. She doesn't have that. It's not there. She's upset. She would be upset for some reason because it brings up a lot or whatever that even means.
And health is socially, in society, talked about in a specific way. It has a specific look. You have to do specific actions. And it needs to look like health to other people, which is where
It's not really a social construct. Health is not a social construct. I think that's one of the stupidest things that I've heard somebody try to say. You can go across all different cultures, all different times and places. There is a concept of health. Maybe a certain health trend would be different at a given time, like something like celery juice. But what is considered healthy, it's pretty universal and it's pretty obvious to people. So that is not a social construct whatsoever. Now, when we do talk about like social categories of fatness or how other people see you and these types of things at different sizes, which I do cover that on this channel as well, just because I think it's important to navigate, especially as you're losing weight. I notice social shifts can be a trigger for a lot of people, and myself included. That is a social construct. So like a small fat, a mid fat, mid-size, those are social constructs. But what is healthy is not a social construct. Health is not a social construct. That's not true. You know, for me, being in the mids, I am midline healthy. I'm just kind of like, blech, health-wise. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's probably not even good, if I'm real.
Performatory aspect comes in, right?
Yeah.
You need to look like you are working to achieve.
I also want to point out that there's a little bit of projection going on with that because there is a performatory or a performative thing within the disorder too. You have to look like you're trying, even though you're not. You have to look like you're on a new diet. You have to tell everybody about it. That's all performative. So she's doing a bit of a projection here. And you also have to act like you're not eating and eating and eating and eating. And you have to act like that isn't happening. That's also performative. And oftentimes people hide stuff. I have to be kind of careful because YouTube is kind of touchy. But people hide things. They don't show, they lie about it. They lie about how much they're eating. This is all performative. So the disorder is performative as well. And again, it's like you reinforce it in someone else. I want to talk about that aspect more this year, the interpersonal. I talked a lot about the intrapersonal last year. This year, I'm looking at talking about interpersonally. So you reinforce it in someone else, even if they have a different one. You know, there are certain things all across the spectrum that people do. People will look at certain people's bodies and say, like, I want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. And they use it as a reinforcement mechanism all the time. And it's really toxic. But the point is, there is a performative aspect, especially within, really within all of them. But in terms of the BINGE side, you're usually performing that you're not BINGing or that you're trying to work on the weight. And so their view is, oh, well, I'm not disordered anymore because I'm not trying to act like I'm losing weight anymore. And it's like, okay, one part of that is gone, but you guys create a whole fat identity. You try to say health at every size. Like, that stuff is still performative. You're still doing it. What's not performative is saying, I feel like crap and my weight has a lot to do with it. That's not performative. What's not performative is saying, I don't want to exercise because I'm lazy. That's not performative. What's not performative is, I'm eating more because I'm hungry. That's not performative either. I mean, you guys have to look at some of the ways. I do think that my channel is a good example of somebody who's not disordered. I tell you guys when I eat more. I tell you guys when I'm not. I tell you guys when I go to the gym. I tell you guys when I don't. For me, though, I base it on physical stuff, which honestly, last year, I barely had to stop. I ate more for 3 weeks versus 8 in 2023. I ate more for 8 weeks versus like 3 or 4 months in 2022 in 2021. So, no, I would say 2022. Like in 2022, I ate more for the entirety of winter, all the way until like April or May. 2023, I ate more until March, like the Ides of March. 2024, I ate more until New Year's. Like I ate from November until New Year's, and then 2025, basically, I was back on it basically before New Year's even. And I ate more starting in like early December rather than like in 2023, it was Halloween. I started eating more. And I ate a lot in November. And I told you guys at the time, I said, I'm really hungry. I'm eating a lot. I was eating so much. I was concerned and questioning if I was relapsing because I was eating so much. But I was very, very hungry. And when the hunger stopped, then I stopped. And I was like, okay, no, it was hunger, But I had also lost like 50 pounds in the year and whatever. Like I had done a deficit and I was super morbidly obese. And there's all these things that went into it that were physical. But when the physical drive was gone, the behavior stopped. And that's not disordered. So, I mean, you can lie about being hungry. That can work too. I guess that could be performative. But in terms of like, if it's physically based, there's usually a time where you could stop. And a lot of people never do. So, you know, me and my friend Eric, which he's been on the channel, some of you guys don't know him, but he's been on the channel quite a bit. We talk about like one of his friends where it's like, she'll talk about, well, it's Halloween, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, well, it's New Year's, it's gonna be Valentine's Day, well, now it's gonna be Easter, now it's Memorial Day, now, well, it's 4th of July. Well, you see, you can kind of keep going with it. That's not real, you know? But it's like, you have to look at, like, for example, even when I ate a lot in 2023, I ended up gaining probably about 10 pounds. That's how much I ate in a month. It was a lot. But it stopped. And that year I had lost 50. So that means that I was still 40 down. I never went all the way back up. And that was 40 down from a 30 down I had lost already in 2022. I think what you really have to look at when it comes to this disorder is how far up do people go back? What length of time? Length of time is huge. Very, very huge. And you have to look at, you know, somebody's gaining and losing very quickly. Like at my worst, it was in 2019. My disorder was so escalated at that time. And I told you guys multiple times, I was keto, so some of it was water, but I lost 80 pounds and gained it all back, then lost it again, then gained it all back again within, I think, a year and a half. And that was extremely harsh for my body to go through. That's a lot of weight to be gaining and losing very quickly. And like I lost it, I think, the first wave, I lost it from September of 2018 till June of 2019. Then I gained it all back before October. And then from October to February, I lost it all again, going into 2020. And then between February to July, I gained it all back. So that's really bad. So I had people, like when I did my video on Rosie, there were people that were pissed because I was saying she gained 100 pounds. But to me, I could see that happening because I've gained and lost that much. Or, you know, I've done a lot in terms of that. And I don't necessarily believe Rosie unless she shows her weight and stuff like that. I don't believe it. Because I also know that people lie in this disorder. So I remember the psychological drive to get back to a certain number within the disorder because it's not real. So it can be tricky. Especially when you have super morbid obesity, it can be very tricky. But I would be skeptical, and people were skeptical of me when I was super morbidly obese as well, which I think is fine. People are a lot less skeptical now, but you do have to be kind of skeptical sometimes because, in my opinion, people do lie. I show the scale, I show the actual numbers and stuff. And, you know, I've been very consistent over the years where it's like I do put on weight in the winter and then it comes off and whatever. So I keep y'all posted, you know. My next weight update, like my post I'll do is when I hit 250. Then I will share it again. And then that will mean like I'm starting my 5-pound increments again. But yeah, you can be pretty assured with me because I started at 383. And the last time I weighed, I was 256. And my measurements are back to what they were before it started getting cold. So my measurements are back to their lowest again. So yeah, let's keep it going. And you have to look year over year. It's tough, especially if somebody's been in it for so many years, because you can have a lot of false recovery. I don't think false recovery can last for like years and years and years, though. I don't think so. It's usually within, in my opinion, somebody with BINGE, they will probably start gaining the weight back typically within 6 months, in my opinion. All right, let's continue.
Yeah. I think it's so important to reiterate that it does not matter the size of your body. You can be unhealthy at any size.
Yes.
And that I feel like people won't argue with as much as you can be healthy at any size.
Oh, 100%.
But you can be unhealthy at any size.
I mean, you've seen it firsthand, right?
Yeah.
Being in eating disorder recovery,
Yeah.
right? How many people didn't look like you?
Are you actually recovered? Because I see a lot of shifting in this conversation. I see a lot of blurring reality in this conversation. So what did she do right there? That very statement, that was toxic ritualistic reinforcement. So she's sharing her tips with her friends and with her audience. Well, I say you can be unhealthy at any size, and people don't fight with that one as much. So again, what is the goal? To get people off the disorder, so you don't have to talk about it. So you don't, and why don't you want to talk about it? So you don't have to change it. So it's a way to get somebody off your back. You have to understand that most of the time when people are in this, their only goal is to get you to stop talking about it. It's their only goal. It's why whenever I say it's not an addiction, it pisses off people with the disorder, because it makes you have to actually consider it. And they don't like it, because if you say it's an addiction, it's out of my control. I'm powerless. You know, people spend years and years dealing with DRUG addiction or alcoholism, and they never get out of it. And it's the same with food, even though it's not. I've always said it's not. You can very easily not eat a donut. You can very easily not eat processed factory food. You don't have to do that. You're not going to get the shakes. You're not going to die. It's psychological. And people try to say, well, they crave a very specific food. It's like they're craving a macronutrient. So if somebody's, for example, craving sugar, they should be able to eat sugar out of a bag. And that should solve that craving on a physical level. If that's not working, then it's psychological. If you have to have a Twinkie, that is not real. That is psychological. Which people say, well, that's psychological addiction. I don't know why people are so attached to it. It doesn't help. It's not. It's a delusion. Which there's a difference between the two things. In psychological addiction, when we talk about recovery and stuff, it's watering down what the word actually is. You could say compulsion. That's better. That's true. It's a different word, though, you see. And why does that piss people off so much? Because you're talking about what it actually is. It's a compulsion. It's a delusional compulsion. It's an obsessive compulsion. That's what it is. And that's what it comes down to when it comes to eating. And people don't want to hear it because it pisses them off, because you're talking about the actual problem. Because if that's the case, then you can stop. And they say, oh, well, just because, like I had somebody say, just because you stopped, no, you think, you're getting arrogant now because you stopped, honey, I was overweight for I was fat for 27 years, at least. I'm still overweight now, in my 30s. I have pictures of high school I was fat, middle school I was fat. I have it all the way down the line, babes. This shit almost killed me. And you want to say, oh, you're just so arrogant. Da, da. Oh, honey, I am the worst of the worst. I rode this to the end of the train, like to the end of the track. And I just stopped. You can stop. You're not going to fool me. You're not going to fool anyone else who has stopped, which there is this narrative of, oh, why are people who have lost the weight, why are they so mean? Because they know how delusional it is. And oftentimes, if they've been in the delusion, you're bitter about it or you're angry about it. And then you hear other people reinforcing it, like them. They're reinforcing it. And it pisses you off. That's why. Because you know it's a delusion. Because you just stopped. It's not real. It just is not real.
That were incredibly unhealthy.
100. I mean, literally dying, right? We talked about the statistics for eating disorders.
Yeah.
You know, there are people
Yeah,
who
and
are
people who have binge, that's more than any of the other ones. More than any of the other ones. Yet we never hear about it. I wonder why. Because it's so easy to project to the other side. Oh, look at that one. That's a huge problem. Even though it's very similar, actually. What they're doing in this is very, 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 very similar. It's much more similar than it's different. So yes, go ahead and point to the other side of the spectrum. Crazy. 1 second, I'll be right back. All right. Just organizing some car stuff. We gotta multitask in this life, in this world.
actually acceptable body where they could be perceived as healthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are literally killing their body.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you are too. And the interesting thing about it is it doesn't matter what somebody else is doing. It doesn't change what you're doing. That's also a very fascinating concept within this disorder. Comparison is also used to reinforce it. Well, I'm not doing what they're doing. You don't think that they look at you and think the same thing? Be so for real. Well, at least I'm not that big. It doesn't change that you're not healthy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change the issue. It doesn't address anything. It's not real. But look at that. They really thought they were eating there. Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. She's going to be like, yeah, totally. Da, da, da.
I know you brought up health. I'm wanting almost to take another step back, and I'm wondering if y'all are okay with it. Like, I just want us to brainstorm for a minute what things we associate with good fatty and bad fatty.
Yeah.
So let's just
Oh, yeah.
start with good fatty, okay?
Good fatty is when you go out to lunch with people, you order a salad because
Alright.
you're supposed to.
Ooh.
Good fatty to me, you can recognize as a good fatty, and when I say good fatty, I mean you have social value.
I think there's a lot of people that make fun of somebody for getting a salad. So I don't know if that's true.
Based on performing or doing or having these things.
It's kind of
Okay.
dated. That would be kind of dated. That'd be like more early 2000s-y.
Okay. Good fatties have thin faces, even if they have fat bodies.
That's a good one.
Good fatties show themselves being active in some kind of way. Good fatties acknowledge that dieting and movement and exercise is good for you, and they say it as a value system.
So
Okay.
that
Yes. And I
What? And so what about somebody who's not fat that says that? Are they also a good fatty? Oh my gosh.
also think I want to preface I this pains me to actually say because I don't think it's a good thing. So I want to say good fatty does not mean it's you being a good fat person.
right.
Oh no, this is what
Right?
it's seen as social value in the
As
We
a-
get it. You guys want to be bratty. You want to be a rebel. You want to do all this stuff. You'll rebel against anything but your disorder. But yes, you want to act like, ooh, we're a baddie. We're rebels. Da, da, da. Even though it's the most the path of least resistance is to stay in your disorder. So it's like, that's not any kind of like, ooh, got you, ooh. No. I told you, in reality, I'm one of the worst fatties. People did not like my approach. People did not like that I spoke on these things when I was still big. People did not like some of the things that I said. Some of the things I said diet-wise, people didn't like. I've gotten a lot of shit for my stances on certain things. A good fatty doesn't comment on other people's dieting at all, or doesn't make any statements about diet. That's a good fatty. I can tell you that. A good fatty is nice. I can tell you that. A good fatty is a people pleaser. I can tell you that. A good fatty has charisma. A good fatty is somebody who is all about other people. That's the real ones. No. But they're not. Y'all aren't bad. Y'all aren't being rebellious because a good fatty doesn't actually lose the weight. That's another one. Sorry, I had to adjust the mic. A good fatty, if they do lose the weight, they have to be super humble about it and always be like, oh, I could gain it back at any moment, and oh, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. Hold on, I think I made this too weird. Okay. 1 second, I need to adjust my sound. Okay, hopefully my sound is still okay, but it's kind of looking weird on my end, so I'm getting paranoid. Hopefully it's still okay. I don't know. It looks really weird on my end, so sorry if the audio is bad.
Good performing fat person.
Yes.
Okay. I think you don't inconvenience anyone with your size, meaning you don't ask for accommodations, meaning you take up as little space as possible. You don't, you know what I'm saying? Like on the subway, you like are truly like sitting in a corner or like standing off to the side.
Meanwhile, the dude next to you is manspreading like a motherfucker, and you're like, I need to take up.
I could agree with that aspect too. Hold on, I'm really tripping about my sound. Okay, I think it's okay. I think it's okay now. I don't know what the hell I don't know what's gonna happen with that part of the video. Hopefully it's fine.
Less space.
Yeah.
I think that in kind of going back to what you were saying about the movement stuff too, there are some fat babes on the internet that I absolutely love, and I will ride for them, right? They're in the community, and I see them post things that are like, you don't have to subscribe to health and diet and workout. Me myself, I definitely work out, right? I have seen that so many times where it's like it's two different messages, right?
That's true.
You don't have to.
You have to do a lot of virtue signaling. This is also very expected in the mids, and I will not do it. So I am not a good mid. I'm not good. Why? Because I break some of the rules of mid too. Again, I'm actually rebellious. I actually don't listen. But what are some of the rules of mid? You have to say you're okay with being mid when you're in it. You have to say, well, I'm fine. I don't want to lose anymore, or I'm good at this size. I could not lose anymore and I'd be fine. You have to be really humble and, oh gosh, and I'm still so big and I don't know. And you have to have like this kind of affect. You have to be really bubbly and happy all the time. I'm not. I'm not going to be. I told you guys, I'm not going to virtue signal on this channel ever. I'm not. So I think there are definitely good and bad expectations. I just think that most of what they think is good or bad is probably not relevant anymore, or it has changed in such a drastic way that they're totally not on point. But I will say, definitely a good fat person would try not to take up as much space. That part is true. So they're right about that one.
Subscribe to this, but just so you know, I'm a good fatty. Just so you know, I do work out. You don't have to, but just so you know, I do work out.
You have to do that too. Like I don't have to do this, or you don't have to do this, but I'm doing it. That's a big one too. So I have a standard for myself, but not anyone else. My standards for everyone else is at the floor, even the gutter, even underground. In fact, you can go ahead and binge thousands of calories a day, and I'm good with it, but I'm not going to do that. That would be a good fat person too. I agree with that. And good mid too. But I don't do that either. I say, no, you shouldn't either. And they're like, ooh, how dare you? Oh my God, I don't care. I don't give a fuck.
I do this. I do this. You know, like I am for you,
But not one of you.
but not one of you.
Well, and I think it's the.
I agree
think
with
it's
that.
the feeling of performing against fat stereotypes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So no
That
medical-
is
As
a good
opposed
fatty.
to
Yeah.
completely adhering to them, which is just as bad, which is what they're doing in this one.
You have no medical issues. You are not, you would never take a day to lay on the couch. God forbid you took a day and you were, quote unquote, lazy.
Yeah.
Right, because when a thin person rests, it's good for them. They're resting. They're taking care of themselves.
Rotting.
When a fat person rests, they're lazy.
Yeah. Well, and like, maybe I feel this more because, I consider myself.
How long are you resting? How many days? How many weeks? How many months? When does rest become laziness? And in certain phases, I would actually advise against resting, aka the small fat phase. You tend to have dopamine issues. You need to keep moving. And you're not as delicate typically during that phase. So you can keep moving. So you could have like one rest day, but you should probably keep it moving. The other 6 days during that time, you should be walking, going to the gym, doing stuff. Because if you just don't do anything for like days and days at that stage, you can totally derail your progress. So other phases, it's different. Like I know in super morbid, you have to rest. It's like a must. And I would get very frustrated when I was super morbid because sometimes online people are like, they won't acknowledge that you're not healthy. It's like, oh, it's all in your head. Oh my gosh, like I'm sure you could do more. Like they're very like about that. But then it's like in other phases, I will tell you, like, you probably shouldn't rest as much. And people will be like, oh my gosh, how dare you say that? Da, da, da. Like, people are just weird. And again, you can be toxically ritualistic at any size. You can believe stupid things at any size. You can have bad behaviors at any size. And when you are especially super morbidly obese, you trigger a lot of people. And I do think that they face that, but they also reinforce it too. So they play into it all the time because, like I said, they are literally a stereotype. You guys are so stereotypical in this. You are so stereotypical. You're literally talking about it's okay to be lazy. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay.
A late bloomer, etc. But good fatties are desirable. Good fatties date people. Good fatties, and I think it's just here's the thing that
I don't know if I agree with her assessment. I think some of that is just more status-y, and it's more like you can replace it with cool. Cool people are desirable. Cool people date people. Cool people this, right? Cool fatties, maybe it's more of like a status thing that she's talking about, in my opinion, which is it's slightly different. It's not super different, but it's not exactly the same either.
fatties that I want to say. I once had someone say this to me, and I think this is what a lot of people feel, is they feel like diet culture tells them to eat the salad, and fat acceptance tells them that they eat the salad, they're bending to diet culture, and they're whatever.
Oh my
And I want to
God,
say,
yeah.
no, it doesn't have to be that. The question that I think fat liberation asks you to consider is, are you eating this because you want to, because you like it, because you find value in it, whether it's nutrition, etc.?
Yeah, fat acceptance doesn't care about anything other than superficiality. So it's more so they will care if you look different than they care. As far as like what you're eating or whatever, they don't care as long as you're not telling them anything about what they're eating. Because if you do, they will be really pissed. Or if you say anything about any particular food or anything, they will be pissed. They'll be super pissed. Whereas like for me, I really avoided getting into passionate, heated debates about diet and food. Like, I do have stances that people are free to disagree with. I don't really care that much. Again, it's like when I used to talk about the soy thing, it's like, it doesn't matter what you say, I'm not eating it. I'm not going to eat it. You know? And I wouldn't be like, oh my God, oh! Like, if you ate it in front of me, I wouldn't care. Because I'm not toxically ritualistic. I don't give a fuck. I don't really care. You know, I don't really care about what anybody's eating necessarily. I don't have like an emotional reaction to what people are eating. It's just it's not rational. So, but that being said, I'm still going to make my choices just like you're going to make yours. You can argue it. You can argue for something or against something. That's fine. I think that that's healthy and normal. But you can't like have this passionate discussion about it. I think that's where it's like, you know, where it's like sometimes people, they would defend soy so ardently, I think often because they're viewing it through a political lens, but mixing politics with diet in that way, where there's such an emotional pitch behind it, it's toxically ritualistic. It is. It's not normal. Like I said, having a stance or an argument, but keeping it logical and cool and calm, that's fine. Even arguing about different policies, that would be more political. So if we talk about banning food dyes, for example, that's a political conversation within diet. Maybe that could be passionate, but it should be more about the politics, not about the actual food. If somebody is upset because how dare you threaten the color of my Fruit Loops, that's, you know, it doesn't even affect the flavor. I'm just saying. So, sorry, I just got a text. I'm going to have to get going. But yeah, you have to just look at things through that perspective, or you have to like pay attention to the anxiety basis around food and the emotional pitch, because it should be pretty low. It's not that serious. Like, I do not give a crap if somebody ate like a bunch of edamame in front of me. I don't care. But it's not going to make me eat it. You know, and I think that that's a more logical approach. So just be careful with that stuff. But I'm going to get going. I got to get going. I'll talk to you guys soon. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.